Hello and welcome to Pixel Symphonic, where we celebrate and learn about video game music with the people who make it, the people who listen to it, and everything in between. My name is Joe DeVader, and this is our inaugural episode. Oh boy. Some of you may already be familiar with me from other ventures of my past and present, and if you are, hey, thanks for stopping by and giving this new thing a shot. I appreciate you being here. Good to see you again. For those of you hearing my voice for the first time, allow me to fully introduce myself. As mentioned before, my name is Joe, and I've been doing podcasts as an amateur for over 15 years, almost exactly half my life. That is painful to think about. While most of my early output is mercifully lost to time and not worth finding, I currently host another show called Smashterpieces, a video game discussion show where my co-host and I are playing one game to represent each character in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I also hosted another show for about 5 years called Original Soundchat. This show released on a weekly basis and featured myself and a co-host, more on him in a bit, each picking one game to research and talk about with a particular focus on looking into either the composer of the soundtrack or some other musician involved with the soundtrack's production, finishing off with picking 5 critical tracks we felt really represented the soundtrack as a whole. And I loved doing this show. I love video game music a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I'm launching this show. While researching some games for OSC, every once in a while I would cover a game that basically required me to go straight to the source for my information, and these were my favorite episodes to do, which led to a new desire. I don't want to just look at text interviews somebody else did with these people, I want to talk to the people themselves. So, Pixel Symphonic is an attempt to get to do that as much as possible. The idea is that this show will release monthly, at least for now, with a new guest each episode. Some of these guests will be composers for games. These are the ones I'm most excited to try and get going. I'd also like to reach out to people who are more adjacent to video games, but not necessarily working on them, YouTubers for example, and talk to them about some of the soundtracks they've fallen in love with over their years of interacting with the medium. Basically, I don't want this show to be about me. I want to talk to other people and hear their perspectives on what I consider to be an incredibly interesting and important part of the video games we love. Anyways, now that I've said I don't want the show to be about me, allow me to contradict that pretty much immediately, but I promise that it's relevant to today's episode, so just bear with me. When I was in late middle school / early high school, the big thing that had me hyped to wake up every morning was the impending release of Super Smash Bros. Brawl for the Nintendo Wii. If you're too young to remember the lead up to it, this is the first game in the series that featured a website that updated every weekday. Well, technically no. Melee had one in Japanese, but for all intents and purposes, the dojo was the first time they did that. It was literally the thing that got me jumping out of bed every school morning with the possibility that that morning's announcement might be a brand new character we hadn't seen before. But aside from those, my favorite updates were when the site would post samples of some of the songs that would be included in the game. See, Brawl was also the first game in the series to have the My Music feature, meaning every stage would actually have a whole list of music that could potentially play on it. When the game finally came out and the soundtrack was ripped, it was over a gigabyte's worth of music. Back then, the iPod Touch I used as an MP3 player only had about 3 available gigs of storage space, if memory is correct, and so putting the Brawl soundtrack on there made it so that there was little room for anything else. That's pretty much when my fate was sealed. I listened almost exclusively to Brawl's soundtrack for a really long time, and that eventually expanded into listening to multiple other soundtracks for games I was playing or past favorites I still loved. Nowadays, game soundtracks are still almost all that I listen to, usually for the games I'm playing at the current time, and I can trace it all back to Super Smash Bros. Brawl. This is also a relevant story for another reason, because it was during this time that a random article button on the Smash Wiki led me to discover a podcast called Show Me Your News. This show is hosted by one Peter Spezia, at the time going by the moniker Yoko, and talked about those weekday updates in the lead up to Brawl's release. After the game came out, SMYN continued on as a general gaming news show, and eventually they did a contest for fans to create a piece of art that showed their fandom for SMYN. Somehow, I won that contest and wound up guesting on one of the episodes. Years would pass, and Peter would eventually invite me and my friends to join a now defunct podcast network, and I even became a host of SMYN for a short period of time. Through all this time, I had become very aware that Peter also had a deep love for video game music, and when the idea for original Soundchat came to mind, there really was nobody I wanted to co-host the show with more, so I pitched it to him, and we hosted that show together uninterrupted every week for 5 full years. The show unfortunately came to an end a little over 2 years ago, but I still felt the fire in me to keep talking about the music that I love. Which brings us to today, and to this show's first guest, Peter Spezia. After hosting Original Soundchat with him for so long, and considering his connection to the era that made me passionate about this subject in the first place, I can think of no more fitting person to kick off this new journey with. Peter has been a good friend of mine for over a decade now, and he's one of the few people I feel I can really let loose with when it comes to talking about a love for game soundtracks. And that's really all there is to it. Look at me, sitting here talking your ear off when I should be throwing over to our conversation. So I'll do just that. I hope you all enjoy the first episode of Pixel Symphonic. Let's just jump on into it. So I guess where I want to start is, can you tell me a little bit about how you ended up getting into video games and then sort of transition that into how did you get interested in video game music, like in general, in specific, I guess?
Oh, that's very interesting. I was a Pokemon kid when I was 10 years old. That was 1998, and that was Pokemon taking off in the United States. So, I mean, it started with the TV show and the cards at school, and then ultimately the games to have a Game Boy. I mean, I had kind of grown up around other family members having game consoles, but that was never a thing that I really grew up with. But Pokemon, getting that Game Boy, that was the start for the interest in owning and playing games. From there, you'd have a bunch of different Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games. I'd get a GameCube when I was 15, and a little game at the time, Super Smash Brothers Melee, was, obviously the big seller a couple years into the GameCube's life cycle at that point, and I was hooked on Super Smash Brothers. By the time that Brawl was, going to be announced and coming out and all of that, I was starting college, and I was trying to work in media arts and trying to grow my skill set there. And there's this thing called podcasting around 2007 that was still very formative. I know these days, almost 20 years later, podcasting is ubiquitous online right now, but I mean, it wasn't then. And so that was something I decided to give a try because Super Smash Brothers Brawl had a hype cycle for its pre-release media coverage and promotion and marketing that few games have really matched since, with the Dojo website and weekday updates of little things about the game. I mean, it's certainly remarkable.
I would argue that not even future Smash games quite managed to grasp it as well.
I mean, they tried, but I wonder what. I'd be fascinated to know what the lessons were, the takeaways, and for Wii U and 3DS, it was like, oh, let's use Miiverse. Well, that wasn't as successful, and then they tried something similar with Ultimate, and yeah, that was it was similar, but I feel like a lot of time had passed, so I guess with social media being very different between 2007 and 2017, 2018, right? Like that's just a totally different time in how social media was presented. So yeah, I feel like Super Smash Brothers Brawl was the game soundtrack that really got me interested in game music, because it was a soundtrack like unlike anything really at its time. I mean, Super Smash Bros. Melee had a nice collection of Nintendo music, right? But it was what I'm going to show my age and memory and inaccuracy, but like, was it 26 characters? There's probably about that many stages, and you'd get a couple music tracks per stage.
At most, stages had two.
Yeah, if you were lucky. And then you'd have certain modes. I mean, so like the Melee soundtrack, great. But the idea of my music with Brawl, and to have your whole historical collection of Nintendo tunes, both original songs and remixes from a collection of, you know, almost like an all-star cast of Japanese composers at the time, to do remixes of these different songs. I mean, it was extraordinary. Not only the size of the soundtrack, but just the quality of music. And I was still at a point where, you know, I had a lot of catching up of Nintendo history to do. So not only was it really formative in helping me learn about game music and appreciating it in general, but almost kind of a primer to dig in deeper into Nintendo's history for myself.
And I mentioned it in the intro, but it's kind of exactly the same for me. And it was also something that really, really forced my hand into, I think I only listen to video game music now, was the size, the file size of the Brawl soundtrack. It was like over a gig of music. And youngins, just so you all know, MP3 player, like that was a lot of space back then.
And it was a dual layer DVD on the Wii, which, you know, that was unique for Super Smash Brothers Brawl. But what a DVD, 4.7 gigs on a single layer, you double that. I mean, that's a lot of space to be taken up by music, and honestly worth it.
So one of the things that I asked you to think about before we started recording was I wanted to ask you, what is a soundtrack that is very meaningful to you? Like any soundtrack in your history, one that comes to mind when you think of one that just holds a lot of personal meaning and admiration in your heart. And tell me about why.
Well, I mean, I really do think it is Super Smash Brothers Brawl. When I started that podcast called Show Me Your News, I was really kind of was learning on the fly and learning as I went, and made a lot of amazing connections with many people. You included, Joe, many years into it. But I mean, we've stayed friends all this time because of that show. And honestly, ultimately, because of that game. And it's just one that really means a lot to me, as, you know, kind of developmental years of, you know, going from being a kid to being an adult. And that's really, I think, a big reason why.
So if you had to pick, let's say, two tracks that you really, really wanted to give a shout out off of the Brawl soundtrack, gun to your head, could you name two?
That's a good question. Let me give that some thought, because there are a lot of, you know, the originals. And
It's also just a huge soundtrack to keep in your head. Like we've mentioned a couple of times now that it was massive, but no, like legitimately it was huge, especially for the time. It was huge.
I think in particular, I mean, there were a lot of remixes, you know, at the time, because I'm sure tracking down music rights was very different than it was in the Smash Brothers games to come. But, you know, certainly one that sticks out is the Bramble Blast. the cover of Sticker Bush Symphony from Donkey Kong Country 2, which at the time I had always thought and read it as Sticker Brush, and then to discover years later that David Wise, the composer, it's like, no, it's Sticker Bush.
Yep, same. I also read it that way and found out. I think there is a recording of us on original Soundchat finding out together that it is Sticker Bush.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
just you wonder how that happened, and then you think Mandela effect, and yeah, that's certainly one that stands out. But just an amazing cover of what's already, I suppose, one of the better tracks in that game, a fantastic soundtrack for Donkey Kong Country 2. And to have that be interpreted that way with the acoustic guitar, an instrument that I was playing a lot at the time, I just adored that song. That's always stood out. And I think whenever people think about the Brawl soundtrack and the covers there, like Bramble Blast, Sticker Bush Symphony, whatever you want to call it, like that was one that really stood out. And then I was also a big Sonic the Hedgehog fan, as learning about games and finding my interests and where that all was, very late compared to most people in life, I'm sure, but Sonic always stuck out. And so the Angel Island Zone remix. That was also one that really, really stood out. I mean, just to have that classic melody from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 be reinterpreted by Jun Senoue of Crush 40. The Sonic Adventure 2 battle game on GameCube was very influential for me. And to have those two worlds come together, that's also an excellent remix on that soundtrack.
that's one I remember because that's one of the ones that was put up as a sample on the dojo back in the day. In fact, if it's, I think the second one that I have like vivid memories of hearing the day of, the other one being the Ocarina of Time medley, which is also very good.
Oh, sure it is. Yeah.
But yeah, I remember because I was not a Sonic fan growing up. I had a friend who was a big Sonic fan, but when he played Sonic, he was playing Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2, not necessarily Sonic 3, Sonic 2. But so that was kind of my first time hearing that one. But for Sticker Bush Symphony, I actually grew up watching my uncle play Donkey Kong Country, all three of them, whenever we would visit. Um, he lived about 40 minutes away, and we would go visit my grandparents, and my uncle would be there, and he'd let me watch him play through all of the Donkey Kong countries. So I was very familiar with that song as it was, at least passingly. This was obviously before I would have gotten into listening to video game music, but yeah, I think those are two like extremely good examples of, and that's not even scratching the surface of the Brawl soundtrack. It's kind of insane. I would honestly say that Brawl is probably one of the most impressive soundtracks of all time, with like Smash 4 and Ultimate only technically beating it out because they have all of Brawl's soundtrack plus more.
Right. But I feel like for the time that it was created in, I don't think anyone had really done anything to that scale in a crossover game across multiple franchises, to have the reverence not only for the original tracks, but then also to have so many good remixes and have it all kind of kind of come together in one package. That was the real deal.
Yeah, extremely impressive, even today.
If I may give a couple other tracks
Go
that
for
stand out, some, certainly we can't talk about Brawl without mentioning the main theme.
Which I always forget was Uematsu.
Yeah.
I forget
Yeah.
every time. I have to remind myself constantly.
So to have, the Final Fantasy composer contribute the main theme and have it be opera that Masahiro Sakurai wrote the lyrics in Latin and have it actually mean something besides just the gibberish that we all thought, back in the day. I mean, it's very, very impressive. And then, of course, like that would get reinterpreted with the leitmotif across the different themes in the game. So I really like the boss battle 1 interpretation of that. That's a fun one that shows up in the Subspace Emissary story mode. Of course, the like Final Destination, like that da 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 da, like that's all over the soundtrack, and for good reason, like it does in the Smash games to come with their themes. But just a very good example there. And then even tracks like, I know you're going through Fire Emblem recently on your other podcast with Path of Radiance, but the Attack song from Fire Emblem.
Which is actually one of the Smashterpieces games we played. I got to hear the original song in context. That was neat.
So fun, but a great remix that always made you excited to listen to it, even if the Castle Siege stage wasn't among my personal favorites. I wasn't really ever a fan, but the music, fantastic.
Has Fire Emblem ever gotten a good stage?
It's a tough one. And then they always try to transform, and that's tricky. And then one that I thought of recently, actually, because of the Grammys and all, the Meta Knight's Revenge track. Of course, the 8-Bit Big Band did a cover of the original song from Kirby Superstar and won a Grammy for it based on their arrangement. But that track, to come from Sakurai's home franchise, his baby of Kirby, that's always a really, really fun arrangement.
I would like to give a shout out to a couple of tracks, if that's okay. This episode's not supposed to be about me. I say in the intro, I don't want this show to be about me, but I can't help myself in this particular case. I have always weirdly had a soft spot for Mona Pizza.
This here is Mona Pizza, makers of the world's best pizza. Fresh sauce and cheese galore, brought straight to your front door.
I don't know why, but I find this song to be an absolute jam. I don't think I've played the game that it's from. I don't know which WarioWare game it's from. I think it's from Twisted.
Oh gosh, one of those maybe. Feels like it's Twisted or Touched, and I'm not sure which. But yeah, to be unfamiliar with Mona's Pizza is Twisted. Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I was unaware of the WarioWare games to hear such a little catchy jingle, and then they have the Japanese version and the English version. So fun.
And then I've also had a real soft spot for what I didn't know at the time was a remix by who is now one of my favorite composers, and at the time would have been one of my favorite composers, King Dedede's theme. I mean, you bring Yoko Shimomura in there, baby. It's super good. And that's also one that I had never heard in context. I had never played. I still don't think I've played Kirby's Dream Land 1. Adventure is the earliest Kirby game I've played, but that's just that remix goes super hard. And I don't know, yeah, just the Brawl soundtrack, there's just it's this mixture of history, personal history. Like you said, we basically met essentially because of this game and this soundtrack, and there's a straight line from point A to point B from me like having to remove a ton of stuff off of my little dinky iPod Touch to fit it all on there to right now when we are recording this show, and the 5 years that we spent recording original Soundchat too. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's just, it's fascinating to think about how much the trajectory of my life was changed by that game that isn't very good.
I mean, certainly the Smash Brothers series has had better installments since, and yeah, you think back to things like Tripping, and yeah, that's tough, and just a slower game in general. There was something about Melee really standing the test of time, but I don't know. Super Smash Brothers Brawl is a special one for me. I think I'll always be tied to that in some weird way, especially with the fan community on smashboards.com, and just the frenzy and always wanting new information. And yeah, one of the best marketing pre-launch cycles of all time. And then to be delivered just a masterpiece of a game soundtrack at the time, was just phenomenal.
So we talked about this before the show because we didn't really know which way to go with this, but there was a second option for soundtrack for you to talk about when we did this today, and I mean, I figure, por qué no los dos, you know?
I mean, Persona 5 has always just really stood out for its soundtrack. And when we were talking about, what are the best game soundtracks of the 2010s on our podcast, Original Sound Chat, that we had for years, that one always stood out as like, well, that's a pretty good number one. And then for it to be even better in its royal incarnation, to add that third semester to the game and add even more acid jazz inspired tunes and so much more to really tell like the full story of that huge narrative game. Persona 5 Royal stands out to me as, if Super Smash Brothers Brawl was like a soundtrack from me growing up in a way, Persona 5 Royal stands out as just one that, yeah, that's one I point to as like, that's my favorite of some of the more recent years, although that's already coming up on 6 years here. I mean, almost 10 if you count the original Persona 5 in Japan. I mean, wow.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh, that I'm having sudden flashbacks to having to like figure out curbside pickup at a Best Buy to pick up my copy of Royal because it was like right as COVID was happening.
It's okay. Persona 6 may become the new GTA 6, and we wait for everything to happen before that game comes out. So who knows?
I'm sure that game will be real one day. Probably not, but it could be. You never know. But once again, like I said with Brawl, if you had to grab any, I'll take off the limiter even if you want to bring up just a couple of your favorite tracks and tell me how they make you feel, to use a woke term. Uh,
Well, I mean, the one that always does stand out is one of my favorite game tracks ever, and that's Life Will Change.
It's not a game, I'm not a robot, and I challenge you. I'm not a phantom, I'm in your face, and I'm here to see you through. Right before your eyes.
Of course, the build up to the big boss showdowns each month or so in the game, just a tremendous piece of music that had a lot of hype to it. But then I also have to give the counterpoint when you're going to the true final boss in the Royal game. That's I Believe.
It's time to unveil the hype you'll be waiting for. It's time to bring an integration of who we win. It's us. I used to have that feeling, premonition.
Like, I don't know how you take such a great song with a again, just an iconic leitmotif, the da 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 da, like, to have that be then interpreted in such a grand way for the finale of the game. Just so impressive. Of course, there are a lot of different songs that got, memed over the time. I mean, Last Surprise, of course.
Try to run me through, hold on, think again. Don't you know what you're starting? But you sure we got that clue? How bad this we go? Don't you know? No more art. And as you look to the horizon,
Not only would you hear that all the time, just all the time in the original game, because it's the main battle theme, and da 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 da, like, just what a catchy little earworm, and that one never really got old for me. And then again, to then point to Royal, and you'd have the ambush track be updated to be Take Over.
we're rolling deep into your underground grip. Though the center prior notice caught for you. We wanna make this party you don't wanna skip. Gonna be a show to remember. Take over, stop the
Such a good one. Oh,
Can't believe they made it better. It's just so impressive. But there are just so many good ones. I mean, gosh, I could list, like half the soundtrack. I'm like, oh, that's a good one. That's great. Like, honestly, you even think about songs like, I think Price comes to mind. That's the third dungeon theme. But even just like that, just a dungeon theme, there are many great tracks in that game. But I don't know, that one stands out to me. I like hearing covers of that one a lot, just for whatever reason. But yeah, I mean, Persona 5 is just such a special game. And of course, now that it's been, beaten over and over again over the years, and everything is Persona 5, just like everything was Persona 4, for the different spin-offs and whatnot. I think we're ready for 6, but there is something about the music experience of Persona 5, and especially in Royal.
it is. I do feel like, while I think it is a very funny joke to say that Persona 5 invented jazz, I do genuinely think that is an extremely funny joke. Or that it invented Japan. That's my favorite one. Like when Neo, the world ends with you. was announced.
Oh,
And people
yeah.
were like, oh man, getting some Persona 5 vibes from this. Like, I do think, more specifically on the invented jazz thing, I feel like there is part of that has sort of convinced some people that the P5 soundtrack is kind of overrated. And I can't stand by that. It's just not. It is as good as people say. And one of the biggest I don't know if I can call this a regret. I have no control over this, but it kind of sucks that Royal came out too late for Takeover to be in Smash when Joker, to bring it all full circle, when Joker wound up in Smash, Takeover couldn't be in because Royal hadn't come out yet when he was released.
It's a very, very fair point, and you make me think of that. That's a really good. I mean, because that announcement of Joker and Smash was that was a special one for me to remember watching that live. And to tie it in back to the music again, I mean, you could mention the original version, certainly a much more chill version, but even the Smash Brothers remix of Beneath the Mask, just an excellent song, and to bring it up to a little more energy is a neat take on it. Of course, you hear that one all the time at night in Persona 5, but yeah, just an amazing soundtrack. And I want to also give one more shout out. It's just another track to throw in there, Layer Cake. EY's Gun Shop is a vibe if you spend some time in there. It has a weird, funky little beginning, but that kick in is nice.
I feel like Layer Cake in particular is a sort of understated banger on that soundtrack. I think that soundtrack has a lot of them, but Layer Cake's not one I see brought up very often, and it is extremely good. Well, I think I'm satisfied with that. Thank you for being on this inaugural episode of whatever this is.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I know we certainly miss talking about video game music. So any way to bring that back together, even just for this opening here, it's really great time.
Yeah, I had a good time speaking with you. Is there any place people can find you if you want them to find you, or are you retired?
Podcasting is a young man's game and I'm an old man. So I don't know. I think a lot of the world has kind of made me shy away from social media and things like that. But if you want to find me, I'm over there on that Blue Sky at Pete Speak Easy. I don't think I've really posted. I don't really do too much there, but that's where you can find me.
All right. Well, again, thank you very much for being on. I will talk to you again soon, hopefully.
Sounds great. Thanks.
And that does it. That's a wrap for the first episode of Pixel Symphonic. I hope you enjoyed, and special thanks to this month's guest, Peter Spezia. Next month, we'll be talking to our second guest, composer Chase Bethia. Can't really give you any preview of our conversation because it actually hasn't happened yet. It's being recorded the same day that this episode comes out. Chase was one of the people near the top of my list to reach out to, so imagine my surprise when he's actually the one who reached out to me first. I hope you're looking forward to hearing it. I am definitely looking forward to recording it. If you would like to keep updated on Pixel Symphonic, you can follow the show on Blue Sky at pixelsymphonic.bsky.social. Once we get a couple episodes under our belt, I plan on starting a Patreon where you'll be able to support the show and get episodes 1 week early. I'll be sure to let you all know when that's up. For now, you can find Pixel Symphonic and my other show, Smashterpieces, at anondino.squarespace.com. If you like this episode and you have a minute, it would be a great help if you could leave a comment and rate us on your podcatcher of choice. Every little bit helps, and I'd really appreciate it. The music featured in this episode was Candy Step and Midnight Trip by Nor, Online Practice Stage by Takahiro Nishi, Shogo Sakai and Masaki Iwasaki, Stickerbush Symphony by David Wise, arranged by Michiko Naruke, Angel Island Zone by Jun Sonoe, Main Theme of Super Smash Bros. Brawl by Nobuo Uematsu, Attack by Yuka Tsujioko, arranged by Kenji Ito, Meta Knight's Revenge by Jun Ishikawa, arranged by Noriyuki Ibodare, Mona Pizza's Song by Kenichi Nishimaki, arranged by Takahiro Nishi, King Dedede's Theme by Jun Ishikawa, arranged by Yoko Shimomura, as well as Life Will Change, I Believe, Last Surprise, Takeover, Price, and Layer Cake by Shoji Meguro. To play us out, you may have noticed that Peter mentioned a song during our talk that I didn't put in a clip of, and that's because I decided I wanted to play a sample of it as our song to play out this episode. I think, considering our talk centered around Smash and Persona, it's fitting to end the whole thing on a clip of Beneath the Mask by Shoji Meguro, arranged for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate by Tomori Kudo and Chico of Ace. Thank you for listening. See you again next month. Stay safe out there.
Searching all along, give us dwell on and on, without a clue, without a sign, without a grasping yet. The real question to be asked: where have I been? I'm a shapeshifter, actless masquerade, hiding both face and mind, a free for you to draw. I'm a shapeshifter, what a shit to be, please don't take off my mind.